This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.
I wonder, have you said this, or I'm sure you've heard it before? I just want to be happy. That's it. I just want to be happy. What is happy? What is happiness? How do we find it? It is, we know, important, but we might be searching for it, maybe looking for it in all the wrong places. We're going to center on that today. And I know it sounds almost rhetorical, maybe somewhat simple, but when you start peeling layers back on it, it starts going very deep. Let's go deep today and find some happiness. So great to have him back here as a psychologist, but also he practices energy psychology and many, many other spiritual psychology as well, other modalities to help us move our lives forward and potentially also find happiness. Seacoast Counseling Centers is what he's part of. That's the man behind it. And Dr. Will Newman is back on the program today. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm glad to be here, Steve.
Always love talking with you. You present these topics in a very easy, compassionate, understandable way. And I know it sounds ridiculous, but yeah, of course we all want happiness. Who would not want happiness? But I got to imagine it probably looks different to everybody. Like everybody, it's different.
And that is true because everyone has different life experiences, different environments, different relationships, different degrees of health and well-being. The variable goes on in multiplicity. Therefore, it's more about one's response to one's experience and one's relationships that one develops in one's experience that makes a major difference.
This is such a simple topic, it sounds like, but once you start putting some thought and intention into it, it's not so much. Do you think we should have that answer right away? What is happiness? All right, yeah, I'll tell you what happiness is. Or is it something that we really need to think deeper on?
It is something that requires deeper awareness of what one is experiencing in the present time, that one experiences gratitude and joy from, and loving, experience of loving others and being loved, support. I'll give you an example of a fascinating research study that was done here in Boston, where I've been practicing in Greater Boston for 47 years. It was done by a psychiatrist at Mass General Hospital and his team over many, many years. And the research examined a cross-section of families in Boston and the Greater Boston area to evaluate with specificity what was being experienced in the family, what was being experienced outside the family, what was the family history. And the conclusion of the research is most fascinating, which is 10% of the individuals who they studied, hundreds of individuals in different families all over Boston, 10% may be temperament or biological or genetic factors. Then Another 50% may be the life stressors that existed in the environment and the family that one grew up in. The other 40%, which allowed even those with more difficult environmental or familiar experiences, is the support and encouragement of relationships that in the family and outside of the family. They made the biggest difference for these research individuals who had a higher degree of happiness. It gave them resilience when they were able to develop relationships that were supported and caring. Somebody to be there whenever you needed help, if you cannot get it, even if it's within your own family. Someone to talk to. And one of the common outcomes is the idea of, if you're worried because there's something you really are fearful of or imagining based on your life experience, if you have good relationships to talk to somebody about, then you don't have to worry alone. You have support. And it made a major difference for the hundreds of people from varying ages, from children to adolescents to adults, in these families in Boston, in the greater Boston area.
So just to reiterate, Dr. Will, are we saying that those who had the support within the family unit were better off, or the other way around, where they had to seek it out and they kind of had to, as my mom used to say, fend for themselves?
Yes, the ones who had it, more support, are better off. However, it may not be a greater degree if it was moderate lack of support in the family, and then they had very good support outside the family. It counterbalanced it, so that what they couldn't get was gained from relationships outside the family to reduce loneliness. Loneliness is a causation for lack of connectedness, experiencing that even if there's something very stressful, you're not alone with it. You have somebody who's witnessing you, caring for you, supporting you, and it made a major difference in the individual's happiness.
Mm. Now, you mentioned the word resilience. Does that often come to when somebody is alone, isolated, or maybe not super connected to others, where it forces you to figure it out? It forces you finally to maybe rely on yourself. Uh, is that impactful as well?
It is a pathway that can help one to experience happiness in a greater degree and a greater consistency, particularly if one develops awareness of practices even if one has less relationships. Practices such as being in the present without judgment of oneself or others, which is really what mindfulness is, being in the present. And extending loving kindness when one is in the presence of others, extended to oneself. I like the quote of a 19th century minister And he said, be kind to everyone, for everyone you meet is fighting a great battle. Meaning, loving kindness and compassion makes a difference to mitigate and correct and lessen the loneliness, which leads to more stress, which leads to less happiness.
And many of us don't realize that.
And
You know what I'm saying, Dr. Will, where, you may be I'm not miserable. People, they disappoint me and all of that. And you almost kind of check out and you create maybe some of your own
yes,
isolation. But if you look at it in a different way, nothing is easy here. You might see it where just volunteering. They say, half of the volunteering is not helping others. You're doing it, you know, because it makes you feel good. So yeah,
yes,
practicing that kindness for
yes.
others.
That's a good example of what I was referring to about our connectedness. When we give compassion and loving kindness to others, as human beings who are also spiritual beings, that connectedness of the love you're giving in that relationship is experienced when you give it.
Mm,
And uh, compassion and loving kindness are major teachings in the Christian and Buddhist tradition. And in Buddhism, the word used for the peace that one gets from loving kindness and being in the present with mindfulness, they call it nirvana, that
mm.
continual peacefulness. And in Christianity, the Apostle Paul writes about it, that neither height or width or depth or breadth can keep me from the love of God,
Mm.
the peace that passes understanding.
Isn't it amazing
It's the,
that you
yes,
could do things for your friends and family and all of that, and it feels good. Maybe you find some joy in that, but you could come across a stranger who needs some help and you just spring to the moment. I got you. I'll help you out with that. Blah, blah. You don't even know who they are. What you walk away with can sometimes be even bigger than it is helping friends and family. Just the feeling of complete compassion, inner happiness that came back to you. A stranger, right?
yes. In fact, when I'm working with patients who present as wanting to increase happiness, one of the most common variables that those who are most unhappy about, in addition to being alone and not having supportive relationships, is not giving, not volunteering, not extending oneself to help others.
Mm. And maybe that's what's missing and we don't realize it. Right?
Yes, yes. And that's why in Christianity, uh, uh, it's called the body of Christ. That the body of Christ are all the members who give and contribute to one another. They all have a function. They all have a strength. And uh, Christ is the head of the church, and all the members giving to one another is practicing that love. And in Buddhism, it's called loving kindness and compassion.
Mm. I want to look at this now in a different way. The definition of happiness. How do you define it? You personally. And again, it's different for everyone.
being in the present with joy and gratitude, with amazement of all there is to be thankful for, and to see the beauty in most everything around us. For example, the beauty of nature is the most evident for most people who take time to experience it. And if we think about beauty more often, can we see, where else can we see it? One example may be in a quote from Emily Dickinson. I remember she said, even in the experience of death of a loved one, the beauty is that the memories of what were given in the experience of what was received will not be exactly the same ever again with anyone else. That there's an imprint of loving kindness from each individual. That's why in the beginning of this discussion, I started off with this most significant variable is relationships, connectedness, experiences.
True. You know, you could have children in a family, let's say three, and a parent passes. It could be recent or, a couple of years later, and they could all be talking about that parent, but they will have a different view. Each one of them will have a different view of their connection. And sometimes it gets a little dicey where one says, well, dad did this for you and never did it for me and treated me this way. And then the other person or other siblings will say, I don't know what you're talking about. I never saw any of that. But that's how it was interpreted. But
Yes.
but it's a very unique connection. And I never thought of it that way, that we have with everyone. No connection will ever be exactly the same. It's impossible. It's impossible.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yes, that's a very important insight. And when we accept that and are grateful for that, we can see the beauty in every moment in that way,
Hmm.
the uniqueness of it.
Now, would you say that even applies to, we talked about somebody passing, but would you say that even applies to, people that are still with us, appreciating that unique connection?
Yes,
Hmm.
that's an example of beauty in the moment. That's why the degree of support in relationships that reduce the time one experiences alone is a direct variable that increases happiness.
Hmm. What else can we do to increase our happiness?
We can practice meditation that is taught in Buddhism. It's a good practice. And as I was describing, the mindfulness meditation is being in the moment and observing what is here without any judgment or reactivity. That's a very good practice. Uh, Taking time to intentionally be in environments where there's natural beauty, like the beauty of nature,
Hmm.
and walk quietly and slowly, studying all that we see around us. the trees and the flowers, the birds, the animals, the grass, the colors, the feeling of the wind, the feeling of the sunlight. To be in the present with that and feel that energy, that loving kindness of natural energy, in addition to the loving kindness that comes from being in the presence of people who treat us that way, and making it a practice that we're supportive whenever relationships reach out and need support.
You know, I've often
And
heard about the grounding is so important, get out to nature. And you hear people say, I'm going back to nature. And when I started looking deeper into it, then I realized I renovated a backyard, sold a house a few years ago, but renovated it. And I go out there bare feet, clipping, cutting. And it was kind of like my passion, my therapy. I wanted it to look a certain way. I was proud of the way it looked. Also increased the value of the home when I sold it. But I realized I felt differently because I was always outside as much as I could be walking around barefoot and call it in nature. And then I had a total different view of this recently. Why is that? Why does that work? Why are we grounded? And then it occurred to me, we are nature. I thought of it as two
yes,
separate things. Oh, those are trees, those are woods. We go there, we feel better. No, that is an extension of us, just from creation, et cetera,
yes,
et cetera. And that's why I guess it feels so good.
yes. We are nature. We are energy. We're a biochemical electrical system. And if that energy of distress that causes the fight or flight and the cortisol builds up and remains in the body, distress leads to dis-ease. By grounding yourself, but it helps clear that energy, that distress energy in the body, such as walking bare feet in nature or doing the energy psychology practices that I taught in previous seminars and talks with you, clearing the meridians, clearing the chakras of that distressful energy from the fight or flight response that causes the cortisol to build up. Uh, I like to call it lightheartedness living, which means letting go of resentment and filling one's heart with gratitude and love and joy and the loving kindness and and making it a practice to give that in relationships as much as we can whenever we can.
It's it's not easy, but it can be a game changer when you just reframe what you're thinking and maybe just take a walk outside for a few minutes, half hour, whatever it might be. Um, we're out of time today. Thank you for this talk.
You're very welcome.
It
I enjoyed it too.
it's important. And we don't realize it. And sometimes we're just so maybe angry. Families are getting together. A lot of challenges ahead where it's, oh, I got to hang out with them. I got to deal with them. Maybe reframe that. Maybe think of it in a different way. You help people.
Reframe it by forgiving. Holding on to the
Exactly.
resentment drops the happiness. Forgiving, letting go, having compassion and kindness increases the happiness.
It's almost as if, Dr. Will, we make room for happiness when we purge that
Yes,
negativity out. What's
yes.
you work with people all the time, moving their lives forward, and you can do it virtually too. What's the best way to find you?
Uh, you can email me at Dr. Bill Newman, Newman @gmail.com. You can call me at my office, 978-388-0022. And you can find me on my website, Energy Psychologist, amesburyma.com. And there's a section there to send me a message.
Beautiful. Thank you for today. Truly appreciate you and everything that you offer. I don't know anybody else that practices energy psychology along with psychology. And it's this is where it's at. This is the key to happiness
Yes.
once we start realizing these things. Thank you.
Right.
Happy Thanksgiving. We'll catch up soon.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You too.
We'll be right back.
This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.